When I went into labor, my parents flat out refused to take me to the hospital. "We're busy with your brother's engagement party. Figure it out," they told me. So, I gave birth by myself. 3 months later, my mom called me, panicked. "Why has the bank frozen our account?" I couldn't help but smile as I responded, "Ask your favorite child." I've always wondered if I truly belonged in my family. Maybe I was just the extra piece in a puzzle that was already finished. My parents never directly said it, but I always felt it. My younger brother, Daniel, was their pride and joy. Everything he did was a big deal, and anything he wanted was prioritized. As for me, I learned early on that my needs didn't matter as much, but nothing could have prepared me for what happened when I went into labor. Let me backtrack. At 21, I found out I was pregnant. It wasn't planned, and when the father bailed, I was left to figure it out on my own. I was scared but determined. I thought maybe this would finally make my parents notice me. Maybe they'd realize I mattered too. Oh, how naive I was. Around the same time, Daniel got engaged. My parents were thrilled. They threw him a grand engagement party, one of those fancy country club affairs with expensive food, live music, and custom decorations. Meanwhile, I was in the background, practically invisible. The day of his party, I started feeling strange. At first, I thought it was just discomfort, but then the pain came quickly and intensely. My water broke right in the middle of the living room. I was panicked. I grabbed my phone and called my mom, who was busy at the party setting everything up. "Mom, it's happening. I need to go to the hospital." She paused, then, in the most indifferent tone, replied, "We're really busy right now. Can't you handle it?" My heart sank. "Mom, please." She cut me off. "I can't deal with this right now. Call an Uber or something. We'll talk later." Then she hung up. I stood there, holding my phone, feeling like the ground had fallen out from under me. They weren't coming. They weren't going to help. I had never felt so alone. I gave birth alone. The contractions were excruciating, but I had no other choice. Somehow, I managed to order an Uber, gripping my belly and trying not to scream as the driver gave me worried looks. I barely made it to the hospital in time. The nurses rushed me in, and I gave birth to a beautiful baby girl, completely alone. No family, no support. Looking at my daughter, her tiny hand holding mine, I made a decision. I was done. The next day, I blocked their numbers. When they reached out days later, I ignored them. When they showed up at my door, I turned them away. 3 months later, my mother called, frantic. "Why is the bank freezing our account?" Here's the thing, while they had ignored me for years, they'd never ignored my money. I had a trust fund, nothing huge, but enough to live comfortably. My grandparents set it up for me before they passed, and my parents managed it when I was younger. The catch? It was all mine when I turned 22. I had just turned 22 a month before giving birth. So, with a lawyer's help, I did what I should have done years ago. I cut them off financially. They had been dipping into my trust fund for years, using it like their own personal savings account, especially for Daniel's engagement party, but now it was gone. When my mom called, her voice full of panic, I couldn't resist. "Ask your favorite child," I said, and hung up. For a while, there was silence, too much silence. I expected them to start calling again, but they didn't. I should have known that meant they were plotting something. It all came crashing down one morning when I opened the door to get a package and found my mom standing there. She looked like a mess, hair unkempt, no makeup, stress written all over her face. She didn't even say hi. She just pushed past me and walked into my house like she owned it. "What the hell?" I demanded, following her inside. She whirled on me, her face red with fury. "How could you, Sophia?" Now she remembered my name. "You froze our money. Are you out of your mind?" I couldn't help but laugh. "Our money? No, Mom, my money, the money you weren't supposed to touch." She scoffed. "Do you have any idea what you've done? We have bills. We have responsibilities. Your father and I." "You mean Daniel?" I interrupted, "because let's be honest, Mom, he's the one you're worried about. You can't pay for his wedding anymore, can you?" She flinched, but quickly recovered. "That's not the point. We're a family. Families share. You're punishing us over a misunderstanding." "A misunderstanding?" I shot back, shaking with anger but standing my ground. "You left me to give birth alone, Mom. You told me to handle it while you partied at his event. I owe you nothing." Her eyes darkened, and for a moment, I thought she might hit me. Instead, she smiled, cold and cruel. "Oh, honey," she said softly, "you have no idea what you've started." And with that, she left. I didn't understand her words until 3 days later when I was served court papers. My parents were suing me. Apparently, they had been withdrawing from my trust fund, assuming I was fine with it. Now, they were trying to claim that since they'd used the money for family expenses, I had no right to take it from them. It was absurd, but the worst part? Daniel was in on it too. After everything, I thought, maybe, just maybe, he'd have some decency. Maybe he'd say, this is too far. But no, he was right there in the lawsuit, claiming that some of the money had gone toward supporting me when I was a child, that because they used it to feed and house me, I owed them. I wanted to scream, but instead, I called my lawyer. While I prepared my defense, my mom launched a full-blown smear campaign against me. She told the entire family I was greedy, an ungrateful daughter who was stealing from them in their time of need. Some relatives reached out to hear my side, others were furious, calling me selfish and cruel. The worst of it all? My Aunt Lydia, she was livid. Your parents raised you for years, she yelled over the phone, and this is how you repay them? By making them suffer? I clenched my jaw. Making them suffer? They left me to give birth alone. Aunt Lydia, they didn't care about me then, and they don't now. She scoffed. Oh, please, they had an event to host, you could have waited. I hung up on her mid-sentence. That was it. I wasn't just angry anymore, I was done. If they wanted to play dirty, I would show them how ugly it could get. If they wanted war, they had it. I wasn't that helpless little girl anymore. I had my own lawyer, my own money, and most importantly, I had the receipts. I countersued, not just to keep my money, but to reclaim every penny they'd taken from me over the years. When they got my lawsuit, the messages and calls started flooding in. My mom's texts were full of fury. How could you do this to your own family? After staying quiet through the entire ordeal, my dad finally called. Sophia, he said, his voice weary, let's just think this through. We're your parents. You can't do this to us. I took a slow breath. You did it to yourselves. He sighed. Look, your mom, she's just emotional. You know how she gets. She didn't mean it. She meant every word, I retorted sharply, just like she meant it when she left me alone to give birth. There was a long silence. Then, in a much colder tone, he said, you're making a mistake, and hung up. A secret uncovered. Weeks into the legal battle, something unexpected came up during a financial review. My lawyer found a savings account tied to my name, but it was one I didn't recognize. We dug deeper. It turned out my grandparents had left me far more than I knew, way more. And guess who had been funneling money from that account into their own? My parents. They had been stealing from my trust fund, but even worse, they had been draining this separate inheritance for years. And the best part? This wasn't a family account, this was theft, plain and simple. It didn't take much to convince my lawyer to pursue fraud charges. As soon as my parents got wind of it, my mom cracked. The breakdown. She showed up at my apartment, banging on the door like she was about to break it down. Sophia, open this damn door, she screamed. I let her yell for a while before opening it just a crack. Her eyes were wild, her hair a mess, her face pale. This wasn't the woman who once bragged about her perfect life. No, this was someone desperate. Why are you doing this? She hissed. Do you want us to be ruined? I raised an eyebrow. You stole from me, 4 years. She scoffed. Don't be so dramatic. We used that money to take care of you. No, I snapped. You used it to throw parties for Daniel, fund your vacations, and buy things for yourselves, not me. She clenched her jaw. Fine, maybe we borrowed a little, but we're family. Family doesn't abandon you when you're in labor, I fired back. Family doesn't steal from you and then expect sympathy when you want your money back. Her face twisted, then, with venom in her voice, she said, you always were selfish. I smiled, and you always thought you'd get away with everything. Before she could speak again, I slammed the door in her face. Daniel's true colors. I expected my parents to fight me, but I never imagined what Daniel would do next. He got engaged, right? Well, his fiancée didn't know about the lawsuit until recently. She called me, expecting insults. I picked up, but instead, I heard, Sophia, I didn't know about any of this. Can we talk? We met at a coffee shop the next day, and what she told me shifted everything. Daniel had been telling her that I offered my trust fund to help with their wedding, that I was happy to share. When she found out the truth, she was furious. I told him if he doesn't drop the lawsuit, the wedding is off, she said, gripping her coffee cup so hard her knuckles turned white. I'm not marrying into a family like this. I stared at her, amazed by her strength. A few days later, Daniel texted me, I hope you're happy. You ruined my life. No apology, just blame. I blocked his number. The breaking point. By now, my parents were backed into a corner. The fraud case was gaining traction. Daniel's wedding was falling apart, and they were drowning without their financial lifeline. Then, out of nowhere, I received a text from my dad. Let's talk. No lawyers, just family. I stared at the message, knowing that they weren't done fighting. They were preparing for one last effort to manipulate me, and I was ready. The final confrontation. I debated meeting with my parents. I knew it wasn't some heartfelt attempt to make amends. It was a last-ditch effort to get me to back down. But I went anyway. I wanted to see them squirm. We met at a fancy restaurant, exactly the kind of place my mother loved, classy and controlled, where no one made a scene. Too bad for her. I wasn't going to play by her rules. They were already seated when I arrived. My mom's arms were crossed, her lips tight. My dad looked exhausted, as if the weight of everything had finally sunk in. I sat down and didn't bother with pleasantries. All right, talk. Dad leaned forward, his voice low. Sophia, this has gone too far. We're family. You're tearing this family apart over money. I let out a bitter laugh. No, you tore this family apart when you left me alone in labor, when you stole from me, when you sued me. Mom scoffed. Oh, please, we took care of you for years. We deserve something for that. You had a child. I shot back. That was your job. You don't get a paycheck for taking care of your own kid. She flinched, but I didn't stop. You took my money for years, lied to me, and when I demanded it back, you tried to destroy me. So no, you don't get to sit here and play the victim. For the first time, Dad couldn't look me in the eye, but Mom doubled down. You don't understand, do you? She hissed. We needed that money. Without it, we're ruined. I tilted my head. And whose fault is that? Silence. Then, in a barely audible voice, she muttered, yours. I laughed, a harsh, ugly laugh that made her face twist in fury. That's rich, I said. You expect me to feel guilty after everything you did? She slammed her hand on the table, making the silverware rattle. People turned to look. I raised you, she hissed. I gave you everything. I stood up. No, Mom, you gave Daniel everything. And now he's left you to clean up his mess, just like always. Her face drained of color, and then, as if on cue, Daniel walked in. The final showdown. He looked like a wreck, bloodshot eyes, unkempt hair. His fiancée had probably called off the wedding, and he seemed lost, but when he saw me, his face twisted with rage. This is your fault, he yelled. You ruined everything. I crossed my arms. No, you did that all on your own. He stormed over, fists clenched. You had no right. You think you're better than us? No, I said, calm and collected, but I'm free. His jaw tightened. You're nothing. You were never supposed to have that money. You were never supposed to. Never supposed to what? I interrupted. Stand up for myself? Expose your lies? Take back what was mine? You're selfish, he spat. A selfish, bitter little. Enough, Dad shouted. We all turned to him. For the first time, I saw something in his face I'd never seen before, regret. This isn't her fault, he said quietly, it's ours. Mom looked at him, wide-eyed. What? He rubbed his temples. We did this. We spoiled Daniel. We enabled him. We stole from our daughter and acted like it was our right. We left her alone when she needed us most. He looked at me, and I saw something break in his expression. I'm sorry, Sophia. And that was more than I ever expected. The aftermath. Mom was furious. You're apologizing to her? She hissed. After everything? Yes, he said, because she was right. Silence hung heavy in the air. For the first time, Mom realized she had lost. The lawsuit was dropped a week later. I didn't forgive them, not completely, but I let the fraud charges go on one condition. They had to pay me back every penny they'd stolen. It took years. Daniel never spoke to me again. My mother never forgave me. To this day, she still tells anyone who will listen that I ruined the family. As for my dad, he tried. He sent letters, called on birthdays, but I never let him fully back in. Some wounds don't heal. And me? I raised my daughter in peace. I built a life for myself without them, and I never once looked back. Thanks for reading. See you in the next story. Stay tuned.